Guys, welcome to the channel. The channel is Mr. Biscuit Speaks. We are here to unpack the insights and epiphanies that are buried deeply. And sometimes, sometimes they're right there on the surface, especially with an artist like Rin, who just loves to hide all kinds of insights and wisdom in his music. Guys, we're about to interact with the genius himself. Eden is something very, very highly suggested on this channel. So if this is the kind of content you're here for, like, subscribe, comment preemptively letting me know you are here for this. Without any further ado, guys, let's get into it. See what Rin has to say on this one.
Let me tell you a story as old as time, the story of Adam and Eve. It starts with a God who wanted more.
Guys, that's already scary. Imagine a God wanting more. What doesn't a God have? I mean, if a God is omniscient, he doesn't want more knowledge. If he's omnipotent, he doesn't want more power. If he's omnipresent, he doesn't want more space. If he's omnitemporal or atemporal, meaning above time or enduring throughout time, he doesn't want more time. What could God possibly want more of? That's a spooky idea to begin with. I also kind of love what Rin is doing with this retro video game thing that he's got going on. It's almost like a Nintendo. Remember the money game? I don't think Rin does anything at all on accident, right? I think it's very intentional, right? The little press start here, right? When you think of video games, you think of choices, right? Choices with big consequences.
God had just created the heavens and the earth. He had the angels by his side, but they had no will of their own, and so the autonomy to love or reject him was never theirs. All but for one, the once called bringer of light, Lucifer, morning star. Lucifer was the fairest and most intelligent.
Bro, why have I heard this story forever, and yet just because it's Rin telling the story in his own way, it's just, he's just built for storytelling, right? It's like, you just want to just sit, but I want popcorn right now. I want some, yeah. Rin is goated for that.
Lucifer, morning star. Lucifer was the fairest and most intelligent of all the angels. He was the closest thing to God's image, and in his likeliness, Lucifer felt restless.
I don't think that Lucifer in the traditional story was more intelligent than the rest of the angels. He was far more beautiful. I think what else did Rin say there? That he, made in God's image. I don't think Lucifer was made in God's image. Mankind was, though. Let's continue.
He began to question and doubt God. He doubted the hierarchy imposed upon him. He felt God was arrogant. In his frustration, Lucifer built a throne that stood even above God's.
Lucifer thought God was arrogant? See, these are the kinds of things that puzzle my mind. Can a God be arrogant? My definition of arrogant is believing more highly of yourself than you truly are. Arrogance occurs as a mismatch between what you think of yourself and your true self. But if God is all-powerful, all-wise, completely pure, omnibenevolent, and above time itself, how would it be possible for God to have a higher identity of himself than he actually is? He is all of these perfect infinities. And so his identity of himself would be in alignment with perfect infinity. And, it would be very difficult for God to actually achieve arrogance, right? I mean, if Lucifer thought that he could actually, establish a fight with God and failed, it would show that Lucifer had the arrogant presumption, supposedly.
And declared mutiny. A war ensued. God, being all-powerful, came out the victor and banished Lucifer from the heavens and exiled him to earth. Once again, God was alone with his power. Perhaps from loneliness, perhaps from curiosity, perhaps from a desire to share love.
Could an omniscient being be curious? Whenever I've been curious, it's because I'm ignorant. But if God is in no way ignorant, meaning omniscient, then it wouldn't be from curiosity. He says, perhaps from loneliness or perhaps from the desire to share love, he creates.
God began to work on his greatest project yet, a being that would mirror himself, the human, two humans specifically, Adam and Eve. They were placed inside a paradise built for them on earth, the Garden of Eden.
Now, anyone who has been following this channel for a long time, we talk about paradise constantly. Paradise literally means garden with walls. The walled garden is what paradise means. The walls establish boundaries, and we need boundaries to thrive in order to play games. So let's say, for instance, I said, hey, let's play a game. And you said, okay, what do you want to play? And I said, well, you go first. What do you mean, right? It's like, before we can play the game, we have to establish boundaries. We need a space to curiously explore, and we need rules of the game so that we don't violate the rules. There have to be boundaries established. So in any paradise, even if we have a great conversation, a conversation is only great if I can explore who you are while not overstepping your boundaries, right? So boundaries are important, and garden or exploration is important. Walls and garden, paradise. Let's continue.
In the garden, God placed a tree that bared fruit that would grant anyone who ate it powers bestowed only to a God, to tell good from evil, left from right, to live righteously or to sin. He named this the tree of knowledge. God told Adam and Eve they could eat whatever they wanted in the garden, but never the fruit from the tree of knowledge. And if they disobeyed him, it would be punishable by death. The basic way the story of Eden is told is that Eve was tempted by Lucifer in the form of a serpent to eat a fruit from the tree of knowledge. Convinced, she bit the fruit, she passed it to Adam, and he did the same. Suddenly, ultimate knowledge filled their minds, and they realized they were naked and felt shame. God discovered this betrayal and felt angered. He exiled Adam and Eve and cursed them with the life of a mortal. They would work, they would bear children, and they would die. The fate of a human.
So, an amazing rendering of this story, right? What does it mean to take that apple, right? To not be satisfied with where you are. A lot of people attribute this story of Adam and Eve to human beings becoming self-conscious, right? People, cognitive scientists have suggested that maybe this is the introduction of like the frontal lobe, where we begin to think about our thoughts. We're no longer animals anymore, where we just have kind of the motor cortex calling us to immediate action. Now, we can have our theories die instead of ourselves. We abandon the present to have a relationship with the future, right? And so if we want this relationship with the future, we have to accumulate and amass to ourselves not only our daily substance, but sustenance that can last into next week, maybe next month, maybe next year, right? Maybe we burn down this area of forest so that we can see, predators approaching from miles around. Maybe we establish homes for ourselves, maybe castles. Maybe we put guards on top of these castles so that you can see how this kind of becomes this reciprocal narrowing process where we're boxed in. We no longer feel free as a result of, this self-consciousness, which arises as a result of, and look, I think maybe that was our ancestors' idea. Snakes make women self-conscious, women make men self-conscious. She hands him the apple, right? And because we're self-conscious all of a sudden, we feel the need to protect ourselves. We identify with transient things like our bodies. And when you identify with something that dies, well, you start to think you're dying, right?
Now look deeper.
In the story, the serpent tempted me by telling me I would gain ultimate knowledge and that God would spare me.
Both were true.
That I would gain ultimate knowledge and that God would spare me. I don't know if the knowledge of evil is something that I would define as ultimate, because it's a participatory kind of knowing. They already had propositional knowledge of evil, right? God told them, do this, don't do that. Eve actually repeated God's command to the serpent, which showed that she already had propositional knowledge of evil. What she didn't have was participatory knowledge of evil. Evil wasn't in her, participating in her. And what the serpent said is, hey, if you just violate God's command, then evil will be a part of you and you'll know what that's like, right? But knowing what that's like is not good. And so the devil henceforth has become associated with, the devil went down to Georgia. He was wanting to make a deal. It's a bad deal. It's a deal you shouldn't take, right? He's a kind of a trickster. Yeah, she got knowledge that she didn't have before, namely participating in evil or having evil participate in her biology and her being. Same with Adam. But that's not what she wanted. It's the opposite of what she expected. It wasn't a power. It was a weakness that eventually enslaved her and the rest of humanity.
This wasn't some great deception, meaning that Satan, in the likeliness of God, perhaps understood his intentions. In fact,
The only lie uttered in the
Garden of Eden was
by God, who did not end up
condemning
Adam and Eve to
death.
This could be seen as an act of
Mercy, but the sheer fact that the tree existed and that humans
were initially cut off from this knowledge.
may imply some part of God was afraid.
Man, I just got to check something really quick. The depth of this story is quite incredible, but I want to look something up. I have to consult with the oracle. I'm wondering, in the original Hebrew, doesn't it say, when you eat of the tree, dying you shall die, as in you will begin dying and eventually die?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a pretty interesting detail. In the original Hebrew of Genesis, the phrase often translated as "you shall surely die" is indeed a kind of emphatic construction. In Hebrew, it's something like mot tamut, which literally can be rendered as "dying you shall die."
Okay, so what God literally says to Adam and Eve is, in the day you eat of the fruit, you will begin dying and eventually you will die. So it's not as if, the death should occur immediately, in which sense God would have been lying in that case.
That if humans were granted the gift of perception, they, like Lucifer, would have the power to reject him too. The fact that there stood a beautiful tree that could
grant this knowledge in the first place
implies that a small part of
God, supposedly all-knowing,
perhaps wanted and intended
the humans to
bite too.
In the Bible, Satan was an exiled angel of free will. Humans are exiled
descendants of Adam and Eve.
also with free will.
Right.
Not only have we shared a similar fate to the devil, we were also both constructed in
We
the
were
image of
also
our
both
Creator,
constructed in the image of our Creator.
meaning our behaviors, in some shape or form, imperfectly echo his.
We could assume that
I completely agree. Our behaviors imperfectly echo God's. This idea of a microcosm or a minicosm, right? When we dream, we create space and time. I can dream that I'm in Mexico for a week vacation, right? I have space, I have time, I'm localized within that arena, and I can play that game. And then when I wake up, I'm like, oh, that was cool, right? The mind is very, very, very powerful. And in that creative act, when I create that dream, I am a microcosm of the divine creative act that starts when in my waking state.
this kind of
God has his doubts,
But
but as the most
powerful
Being in the universe
he has no one above him
to turn to with questions, and no one to
Doubt but himself, an incredibly lonely and isolating existence.
We must only assume that the common thread between God, Lucifer, and us is the desire for more, an eternal curiosity, a desire perhaps birthed from a seed of loneliness. If not, why would we exist in the first place?
That's a really good question, right? I love how Rin is picking this thing apart. Like, is it loneliness? Is it the desire to share love? Is it curiosity? Why did God make us in the first place? And the answer is, I don't know. My hypothesis from my worldview is that, I tend to be more on the Hegelian side, whereas whatever is fundamental is blossoming by definition, and that we are the accidental, not intentional result of God's ever blossoming and becoming, right? So we are a finite determination of infinity, which will be further determined by our negation when we die, right? And so, we're a finite expression of the infinity, And when we die, that'll be a better determination of that small role we play. And that God is not intentionally trying to create the heavens and the earth, or intentionally, trying to create human beings, but is just being God and just blossoming in his beauty and being.
The constantly looping, bittersweet irony is whether gifted by some omnipotent God or simply a byproduct of billions of years of evolution, here we stand, in 2023, as creatures with free will. The only creatures that understand and define good from bad. Creatures with the potential of a God. And what do we do with that free will, my friends? We willingly walk to the edge of a cliff.
Right.
In the name of progress, we jump off the precipice. The empires we build ravage the earth. The natural order of things are necessary to survive. Any systems which do not honor homeostasis eventually perish. Our free will overrides our own biological instinct. We can take more than we eat. We can kill more than we need. We can willingly create weapons with the potential to burn everything we've built to the ground. We willingly decide to bow at the altar of greed, the most insidious and destructive of all sins. We put our faith in corporations who pose as rulers. We willingly allow ourselves to be led by outdated power systems ran by corrupted politicians and bloated dictators.
See, now, why wouldn't this be the result of us, when you choose to transgress the boundaries, what you are saying is, it is my decision to decide the boundaries. And so, Rin is saying, we've been granted this freedom. We overstepped God's boundaries. God said, you can do anything you want in the garden, just don't eat from this one tree. That's a pretty small boundary for a pretty great life. But in transgressing that boundary, we called ourselves God. We became God. And now it is the prerogative of the human being to say what the new boundary is. And we haven't come to an agreement on that. And so it would seem to me that if you are on the side of Lucifer, which you have every right to be, if you're on the side of, hey, let's take the reins away from God and let's determine ourselves where we want to put the boundary limits, at that point, I would suggest that it might be inappropriate or even contradictory to shame mankind for the designation of his or her new boundary, right? Maybe our new boundary is, he's like, hey, I'm going to take as much as I want. I'm going to continue exploring. I'm going to weaponize outer space. I'm going to become this interplanetary threat. Because it's all on us now, right? When mankind does not submit to something greater than himself, when we are equal with God, then it becomes very difficult at that point to tell this big hive mind entity, that you've done something out of place. Remember, God was trying to establish those rules in the beginning. And now we're kind of running rampant here.
Who claim domain and dominion over an open and free land.
We willingly elect the corrupted when the decision was always ours to build something better. We willingly create and impose separation because of beliefs that we are force-fed through our phones and television sets. We always had the will to reject these things, but we adhere to them as though they were the laws of physics.
Right.
War, famine, pestilence, greed, these aren't things imposed upon us by an all-powerful God or by his demonic adversary. They are here because of us, not because of free will, but because of our inability to use it.
Did you guys notice that when he flashed God on the screen, there was like little game sound, right? He's like, yeah, that's a game you want to play. And I know that establishes some control, for those in the power position in the church or the clergy or whatever. It's a game that certain people decide to play, the religious game. Nothing is accidental with Rin. I love the artistic nature of this.
We must be motivated to be better, not out of fear of punishment of an eternal damnation, but because the choice exists, because we love ourselves, because we have the power to absolve ourselves of so much unnecessary suffering. take a second to be in this very moment. In this moment, how much suffering is happening all over the planet right now? How many people are dying of illnesses that could have easily been cured, but aren't because of the selfishness and greediness of humanity? How many people break their backs and reject their own passions to simply afford bills and food? How many of us crave distraction from existence? How many of us numb that pain in whatever way necessary? How many children are being abused? How many people sleep cold and hungry on the streets? How many of us become cogs inside a machine that is destroying itself? How many soldiers have been forced to fight in meaningless wars? How many humans have killed for ideals they don't believe in or understand? How many people have died for the greed of another man?
Yeah. Rin's call to action, his calls to action are always and will forever be epic and accurate. But I do wonder, and leave this in the comments, right? Do you believe that humanity, if the time ran backwards, if we were able to start over, that we wouldn't end up in this very same place, right? I mean, human beings aren't the only social animal that establish these types of weird hierarchies where there's a domineering brute up at the top, right? And we are animals at the end of the day. I love that he says we have free will. We can decide to do better. We can turn the whole thing around. And I think that that's true as long as you're talking about an individual. But I don't know that the human hive mind loves itself. I mean, look at the actions of humanity. Look at the images that Rin was just showing us. Does that seem like a human entity that really loves itself? I don't know. I know that for me personally, it is not a good investment to invest my desire for fulfillment and joy in the hope that human beings will turn this nonsense around. I don't think that's a good investment. I think that sets me up for cognitive drift, to where I'm just always stressed out. You know, human beings as a group are beautiful and compassionate and loving and destructive and evil. We're this big, right? So does that make me a pessimist? Let me know in the comments.
And how much of this was avoidable?
That's the question. Thank you, Rin. That's also something I want to correspond with you with in the comments. Do you believe any of this was avoidable? I mean, according to the physicists, who are determinists, I think, for the most part, they just believe, like, look, we are just time plus matter plus chance in a state of flux. I know it seems like you're free to do your thing, but in reality, you're just a result of what your parents thought, and, what culture you're in, and, history, and you don't have half as much control as you think you do, right? And so, was all of this avoidable is a very important question.
As written in the Bible, Satan was not condemned to hell. Satan was condemned to earth. He lives there amongst other creatures with free will, who always had the choice and still chose their own undoing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our self-made hell. The bittersweet irony is this is a creation of our own design. I'll leave you with this. Consider what you have done here today. You have worked together as individuals collaborating to form a giant neural network, a hive mind capable of achieving incredible things.
Right.
We have lent on each other's strengths to solve puzzles and decipher riddles, and we've done so to win money. Imagine applying that same spirit and determination to creating the closest thing we have to paradise here on Earth. By using the power of collaboration, we can work together to even the playing field for everybody. Our dystopias can become utopias. Our Jahannams can become Jannah. Our hells can become heaven.
I completely agree with this. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, which I've always taken to mean that it's something that's inside. It's not something that what I love is bringing people together under insights and wisdom, right? So I have Wisdom School. We're actually going to start planting these little wisdom stoas all across Washington, and hopefully that spreads across the U.S. so that wisdom can just be something that people can go somewhere and get for free. And it's just conversation. It's just open, curious attention being paid to whatever your ideas are. But maybe that's the small role that I get to play. I mean, things like the book club that we all started. Join us for 1984. That'll be tomorrow. This is the small role that I get to play. I don't necessarily have to be perpetually in a state of stress because I'm not changing the entire trajectory of the world. But I'm doing my small part based on the things that I love to make it better in my sphere of influence, at least. And I think that's a lesson that all of us can take. Not necessarily that you have to be an entire world changer or that you have to live in a perpetual state of stress as a result of things getting darker. But that at the end of it all, and it might all be ending. Shout out to Bo Burnham. Hey, what can you say? We were overdue, but it'll be over soon. Just you wait. Right? Kind of a dark message, that funny feeling. But at the end of it all, maybe you can be that little sliver of light, right? That wasn't so cognitively limited as a result of what was surrounding you. That you did your part for good.
Right here on Earth. And this sentiment applies to atheists, agnostics, and believers alike. Myself, I'm an agnostic who believes. I believe in us. We must do better because we can choose to. We must be better simply because the option exists. Thank you.
Brilliant. And there's that, there's the pig mask again. Shout out to Rin for starting the Animal Farm Book Club. And I know better than to stop this video before it's all over. I've been completely gotten on for that, but I think that's the end. Yeah. Guys, correspond with me. Let me know what your thoughts are. Become a member, either an Epiphany member, Insight member. Get yourself some merch. Support the channel in any way that you see fit and that you can. Thank you for your open, curious attention.